Just fix it in post.
Oh yeah, that's great, but we'll never use it.
There's no budget, and it was due like yesterday.
There's been a slight change in direction.
I promise, it's just one last revision.
Welcome to Just Fix It in Post, industry insights straight from the source. I'm your host, Sean Rice, and welcome.
Today we've got a creative powerhouse joining us. He's a photographer, director, designer, illustrator, and just for fun, a musician. You've seen his work with brands like Postmates, Mailchimp, Cartoon Network, and Disney. His photos have popped up everywhere from CNN to BuzzFeed. He's allergic to cats and carrots, but obsessed with the 90s, and he can juggle more creative roles than anyone I know. Welcome to the show, Jason Travis.
Hey, Sean.
It's always the fun part is the intro. It's like I get so excited about it.
Yeah.
So I gotta say, like I've been compositing for a lot of people. When I was on set on Native with you, and then I hadn't seen your work yet, because normally I don't like to, because then it kind of preconceived ideas of how things are going to be. And I saw your work, and then I went online and looked at your work, and I was like, holy shit, this guy has literally been able to build content that is creative in nature, embrace storytelling, and then elevated by a technique. The concept is just the strongest, most compelling portion of the artwork. And I was like, and then I saw your movies and your shorts and your GIFs and your memes. And I was like, I just couldn't get enough. And I was so excited. I'm like, I want to do everything with this guy. I was so excited. So anyways, tell me all about you, where you started, how you got here, the whole process. I want to know.
Let's see, where do I start? I was always doing art as a kid. That's one thing, art and music. And I was an only child, so I spent a lot of time by myself working on things. I don't know where it came from. Just always creative, like building things on my own. And then, once I was in high school, I took some photography classes. I took every art class that they had until they had to start making them up for me. And that's just where I lived. That was my sphere. I thought about going into, I was friends with the drama kids. I thought about, that maybe that was a path. I was in orchestra. I just always gravitated towards like the arts, and that's once I picked up a guitar, that was it for me. It was everything was about creating things, and eventually I went to college and I dabbled in music, but then I landed in a graphic design program. And then from there, I think I really kind of found my calling, I guess you would say, my voice. And I worked for different agencies after I graduated. And one thing that was really important there was I kind of was surrounded by people that were better than me at design. And they really pushed me into a world of photography. They said, hey, you're really good at that. I think maybe that's where your focus should lie. So that was kind of the pathway. It was, and I meet up with different people from my graphic design program, and they're all doing different things. One guy built an app, another person is working in the design field, another person is doing something completely different. So I think at that point, in the early 2000s was sort of, like a lot of college majors, it was a jumping off point into like, where do you build your career? Where's your focus go after that? So for me, mine was, landed more in the photography world, but it was always, a bit rooted in this graphic design kind of landscape. So that's why I think I have a lot of, just graphic nature to my photography and my creations that I make, I guess.
What was kind of the connection between the commercial world and your artistry? When did that first start taking place?
The commercial world kind of came later. I think initially when I was, working for the design agencies, I was seeing a little bit of commercial landscape, but it seemed, I wasn't working on the most prestigious, amazing campaigns or anything. I think initially, making your own projects for yourself is kind of where I I kind of started to experiment a bit, and I think eventually they kind of sandwiched their way into a commercial, being able to be adapted into a commercial landscape. But initially, I think I was always kind of working on my own stuff, kind of feeling maybe more like an artist or something like that rather than doing something for someone else. But there was a convergence, I think, in some of those early days of working. A lot of things were initially was ways of me to get better at things. So I think like starting a photo series and getting able to photograph people and get to know them and just get to know the human condition a little bit better and figure out, what it is that I wanted to do for a living. But I think I used to shoot weddings a lot, and that felt less commercial. That was more like flexing my muscles, getting better at photography, getting better at being around people, so that was sort of another avenue into this photography world of sort of developing my own style and everything. But yeah, I think the commercial came a little bit later, but there was a evolution of doing personal work, and and it's still sort of divided whether I'm doing something for myself and then it can lend itself to a commercial space.
I think that's kind of the dream as an artist, is to be able to be doing yourself as commercial work. What were some of the first kind of commercial jobs? And then we'll get into kind of the finding yourself aspect of it. But what were kind of the first things out the gate?
As far as design goes, I worked with, teams to create, bigger campaigns for hotels and, different like little projects for those weren't have anything to do with me. Those were like projects that came through the agency and like clients that they already had. So I was working in Atlanta and working for a couple different agencies and just being a part of teams working on things. Well, I was getting my own client base in photography, but then once I got a job at Mailchimp, that was kind of like I got a full-time job at Mailchimp working in the design department, but also being like the lead photographer. And this was sort of like the wild west of working in-house at a brand. And that's kind of where things were starting to like take shape, I think, and having a lot of flexibility to be having people that trusted you. And I was really thankful to kind of get into that role at that company. And I'd say that's really where it started taking shape, because I was working within a brand and, putting myself as much as I could, but the trust was there. So finding someone that, is trusting of you and able to, let's see, how should I put this?
Not tell you what to do every second of every hour of every day?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a thing, and I mean, this really goes a long way, because these were great people that I was working with, and they were the ones that were saying, hey, we like what you do, and if you're not happy with what you're doing, we're not going to be happy. So we really want you. And that's so rare to find, to be able to work in a company with that much freedom. And, not everything saw the light of day, but there was a lot of really cool projects stemming from just exploring things. And there was, we were calling it Design Lab at one point, because there was, that's just rare. That's a rare instance, and I haven't really experienced that too much, like before or after that experience. I know, bigger companies like Instagram, Apple, they have these sort of internal, I don't know what you would call them, sort of experimental departments. But our experimental department was very outward facing, and it was very much like these projects were going on billboards, and we were all working internally, and the company was in a huge growth period. So that was a place where I think I was really getting my footing as far as working alongside people within a brand, trying to like hit a mark, but also trying to like push what we were doing.
So from there, how did they then transition into you being a freelance photographer and then doing editorial and advertising?
I was getting jobs on the side, freelance, while I was working in Atlanta for different editorials, and I think I was just sort of like getting to know people around the city. One thing, I was building a network, and that was growing. And then my now wife got a position in Santa Monica here in California, and she'd always wanted to move here, and I was a little nervous about it. I was, still full-time at Mailchimp, and she, took me a minute, and then I said, let's do this, because what's to lose going to a bigger city? And I never lived outside of Georgia, and I mean, I have no regrets. I hit the ground running. It was a little slow at first, and then I got some really good gigs, some good jobs, some good work, and I was still going back to Atlanta here and there because of that network I had already sort of built. So there was a little bit of both worlds kind of contributing to this like life that I was starting to build here in Los Angeles. And so it was it started to take off. And I used to tell people this like early, about 8 years ago when I like moved here, that there were just so many opportunities happening at the time, and there was so many brands, and there were so many companies, and I just felt like I had moved to a bigger city that had more of a focus on commercial photography, and there was just such a huge creative sphere and all types of different people. And so that just felt like an explosion after about a year. And so it was, it's like anyone asks you, it's tough to like step that foot. I'd gone back and forth a couple times between full-time work and freelance work, and juggled both, and it's a hard transition between those two.
What was some of the, a lot of people come from other places to move here to work. What were some of the steps you took in order to be able to market and promote yourself and be able to get work when you first got here?
A little bit of it was having that sort of, still having that connection from where I used to live. And, it's kind of felt like a slow transition. Like I was still flying back to take on some work, and Mailchimp was still sort of had me doing some freelance stuff for them. So that was helpful to have that sort of in my back pocket, as like, oh, I still have this sort of like previous life that's like helping to further me into my new position, and they really supported me. One of the things I think really lucky to get some work from an agency that were looking for someone to do some photographs where I was organizing product, which was like something that I had been working on for years, but had only really dabbled in it commercially, because I did it personally for myself with this persona project of looking at what people carry in their bags. And knolling was becoming a thing, I think, with campaigns, like just organizing things on a right angle and showcasing them. Flat lays, that kind of stuff was didn't always have like terminology, but it was becoming more popular. So I was lucky to have an agency reach out to me to do something like that for the 99-cent only store. And I hadn't even heard of this store. It's a very California-based, I think they were in 4 states. They've since gone away, but they were this agency I was working for. That was one of their clients, and so we were developing this look and feel, and it was like, I was so thankful to be given that call like 3 months after I moved here. So that's, I don't know what you call that, karma. Just really, hey, this guy just moved here, and this office we're working on this is just down the street. I had built an online presence through Flickr, which was just a really good source back in 2007, 2008 for people to get a view of your photography, and so my series of organizing things had grown lots of legs. I'd done work for CNN based on that series, and HLN had done a little series so I got some eyeballs on some of my work through the internet, I guess you would say. A mixture of working with brands from where I used to live, getting really lucky with new brands reaching out, and then the sort of just like trickle effect and working with someone else a month after I moved here that was in San Francisco. I flew up there, and that was an old connection. I really like who I knew. Eventually I signed with an agency and was like pitching for work, and that all came through a friend of a friend. I feel like the networking has been helpful. So there was a mixture of two things. There was this work I had been doing and people getting a sense of my style and my organization photography. And then there was a sense of like, word of mouth, I guess. So the agency would market me a little bit. I tried to market myself as I could. I didn't have an email newsletter. Funny enough, after working at Mailchimp, who makes email newsletters, I just started that recently. I'm always trying to post things online, and I'm always still learning about ways of marketing myself.
When did you pick up your rep? About what point did you start getting represented?
That was probably about 2017, I think. I was working with a company called Bright Media out of New York, and that was someone caught my name and passed it along, and so that was I had no idea what an agency or artist representation was at the time. I had friends, also photographers that had reps or had management, but it wasn't really something I had thought of until I did started getting some offers that were kind of more out of my scope, and I wasn't understanding the amount of work or what was necessary, and just the growth of these bigger shoots and working for agencies for like a bigger brand, because I had done stuff in-house and I had done stuff for smaller companies, and we'd always like kind of worked things out. But I took a leap with that, and we pitched for some work and got a couple of shoots, and that was a big learning experience. And I still think that there's huge artists that have no representation, and I think it's just about what people have the knowledge for, what they're able to sort of work through when it comes to their terms and their creative process.
Every artist, I feel like there's a challenge, or you spend maybe your entire career trying to develop your own style and what separates you from everybody else. And trends happen alongside, you while you're developing a style or have a style, and you are really good at being able to take a trend that's happening and make it your own almost seamlessly. So if you can kind of walk me through.
Oh, thanks for saying that. I look back at my work from when I was really young, and I think I just had a sense of, I don't know how to define what my style is. I think the drone is a good example to kind of iterate this point, but drones are becoming popular for photography, and I knew that I had already done this organization kind of style that was like something that I was really keen on. And so I thought, why don't I try and do this with a band? Because I love music. I love just stuff. So I photographed a band with all their equipment laid out. It was very tactile. We went out to a field. They brought all their equipment. They loaded it out on the field. I organized it, and then I was getting a top-down view with the drone perspective. And so that, for me, was just taking what I do and adapting it to a different perspective. And I do that a lot, I feel like, with a lot of, whether it's movement or trying to do like a burst of GIFs or a music video. Like, I've always loved movies, so I try to push myself out of the boundaries. I've always been been a little bit colorblind. I've always been having trouble with that. I've tried what feels like really hard to get skin tones right and get colors right, and I don't always know if I'm actually accurate. But I think with other colors, I really want them to be bright and pop, and I think that definitely plays a part in my overall look of my style of design, photography, whatever it is I'm working on. But also you have to pay a little bit attention to the assignment, and if you are working with a brand that's looking for something to fit into their style, you have to sort of, fit in a little bit. But if they're looking for something that's very much like you, then I think by all means try to push them as far as you can. There's another layer of creating something for a brand too, where they'll want something very specifically to fit, and I could just be like a hired hand, but with the technical capabilities to do this job. But then, for instance, I want to explore it more. So a lot of times I'll explore something on my own. Maybe it's more fitting with the times. Maybe I took a family portrait recently, and I think I had a yellow background, and then I was thinking, oh, this is really close to that Charlie XCX Brat color. Why don't I just make it that color for fun? Little tweaks like that, where it's like keeping your eye on the zeitgeist. I think that's like an example of something where I think it is kind of keeping your finger on the pulse a bit, but you don't want to copy something exactly. So I think there is looking at things through different lenses and trying to do your version, I guess, of what's happening. But as far as like style, like that's always changing. I've grown to really like specific having control of lighting situations because of this color kind of blindness, this sort of color. I like to have control over that as much as possible. So sometimes with specific lighting or strobes or flash, I have a little bit more capability, and there is a lot more flash and stuff happening these days too. I think because there is so much of people shooting stuff on their phone, they're having a flash kind of, or gives it more of like this is maybe someone with a little bit more technical, know-abouts, I guess. Like maybe there is somebody that has a professional lens on this versus someone that's just sort of got like a phone. So that's I just like the look of a crisp like flash, but that's something I noticed sort of. I'm always looking at fashion shoots and editorial shoots and seeing how there's overlap with different like commercial work and food photography. And so yeah, I think as far as like staying up with the trends, or it's just about keeping your finger on the pulse and always trying to like push yourself and keep making new stuff. And eventually you'll kind of get sick of one thing and you'll try something else. And I think that's something too. Like I always want to show new work. I'm not someone that like goes into the past too much with like, showing older things. I think I always want to push what I'm doing. And so these iterations kind of lead to where I'm at with certain things. I think an example that's like, I was working directly with Postmates on for a while, and they were one of those rare instances where they had me like pitch some projects to them. So I took this sort of married drone photos with like food, and these people were dreaming of food. So it's a lot of Photoshop, but that was something that I hadn't really seen done in that way, and it was a concept that I wanted to push, and I think it turned out really well. And so that's taking like two things that I do, putting them together. I styled the people in the photos to, having that control to sort of, but it takes a minute to get to that. I had to already know how to sort of do the drone photos. I had to know how to do food photography and kind of combine these. So for me, there is a lot of iteration that happens. Oh, I did this thing like 5-6 years ago, but how could I do it differently? Or how could I push it to be in a different place? That kind of thing.
It sounds like you've let rules go a bit and just try to control every aspect that you can. What are some of your inspirations for your work? Where do you take inspiration from?
I take inspiration from, let's see, where do I take it the most from? I mean, I think the people that are in front of the camera, like I get a lot of inspiration from just, whether living in a photography world where I'm constantly thinking about the next shoot or what I'm doing. Because I do try a lot of different things and work with a lot of different types of photography, I'll get sort of kind of tired of products after a while. I'm like, oh, this is just like, there's not a lot happening here. And then I'll want to photograph people. And then once I've photographed enough people or worked on a project with models or whatever, then I'm like, oh, let's get back to the moving things around in the safe space of working in a studio.
Seems like you take your inspiration from the process.
Oh, I've done this enough. And then my brain goes to a different place where it's like, oh, let's do this other thing that you've wanted to do for a while. I think right now, the world around me, obviously, I think a lot of people get inspiration from that. I live in a place that's very colorful, near the beach. And I have a little girl and she's 21 months old and I photograph her all the time.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks. It's been so fun, that she's become just like my little portrait kid, and so that's become recently where I'm photographing her a lot in the world. But one of the things I was a lot of times I don't have the time to work on something, and I was really inspired by seeing people just repair their cars. This was something where it's, how can I make something when I'm walking the dog and walking my daughter? There's a car that I love the color of the tape on that car. It's really interesting to me that someone tried to repair their car. And then that became just me like blinders on looking for the certain angle and while staying engaged with walking the dog or whatever. It started becoming a series. And then I thought, what can I name this thing? And I had all these like names floating around my head. And then I decided, I'm going to call this Bang Up Job, because it kind of sounds, they bang the car up, but they're doing a bang up job at fixing it themselves. DIY self-repair. So I started photographing it, and that became my inspiration to look around for these cars. I was just like, oh, what's the best one? And I have no control over it. So it's just, and I want there to be bright sunlight. And so that was, I don't know, I was just getting, I don't know what it is. I don't know how, it just filled me with joy to be looking out for these cars. And when I would see one, I would get like excited because I knew that I was like, creating a bigger series of pictures. Okay, well, that's cool. Now I'm in a place where I have all these images. Where can I push that to? And I had the idea to do like a test shoot with like a model and mimic the car and what's going on with the colors and the tape, but on that person's face. And maybe those can like live alongside each other. And I haven't done that yet, but that's in my list of things to like try out. So it is sort of like takes a minute sometimes to get to the ideas and execute them, and that might not turn out great. It might not work how I want. So maybe the second round of that is what I want. And but yeah, I think it's more about the inspiration is coming a bit from like fulfilling something that I want to make. I think that goes back to me being like 14, 15, and I don't know, picking up a guitar. This is brand new, and so looking for brand new things I can try out. I don't know, where does inspiration come from? A lot of times you'll see this image, whether it's on an ad campaign or Instagram or whatever it is, and it's just like, whoa. It's hard to catch people's attention these days, and I think it is the it's even harder to do it within a commercial setting. When you see an artist make something that's like really eye-catching and profound, like that's inspiring. And then where do you take that? You don't want to just filter it and like copy and make something, but put it in sort of like a, oh man, they went out on a limb and they made this thing, and you take that as the inspiration.
I was wondering if you can kind of talk a little bit about what you have been up to, and maybe take one job and kind of walk me through, from start to finish, what your process is on, when you get work or someone asks you to do something. So what have you been up to?
I have been up to raising Poppy, our daughter. So that's been quite a change as far as taking on work. My wife and I kind of split up looking after her, and so it's become a little bit more of like personal shoots or test shoots have to really be kind of thought about, whereas making the time for it, whereas I used to have a lot more time to do these things and experiment. So it's like really, you must know about this, like maximizing, prioritizing, figuring out when you can work on these things where it's like, oh, I can't do this fun, creative thing for myself right now because I need to focus on this job that's actually like paying the bills. So I do think it's harder for me these days to make time for the creative projects, and that's another reason where it's like, oh, I could photograph these cars on the street while I'm walking and things like that. And that's just something like for me, but that could lead to something else, or I always kind of view something as like this may be like a personal artwork, but I've had things in the past that I've done versions of my personal thing as a commercial job. So you, for instance, talking about doing this shoot with someone with tape on their face and mimicking this car series I've already started, like I'd love to work with like a wardrobe stylist on this, makeup artist. It's kind of like getting to work with a team and the people and make some art in the time that I have. But other than that, I've been working with other brands. I've been working with a company called Ergo Baby. They make baby carriers and strollers, and I feel pretty aligned with that since I have my own little toddler. So that's been fun, and that came through networking. I also done some work this year and last year. That's been nice to have some consistent work for Eastman Guitars.
Oh, cool.
And they also own a strings company. They're based in Pomona, so they have a studio there, and I'm able to go work at their studio and shoot their product there. And then there's other little shoots that come up here and there that whether it's an event or it's like headshots for someone, there's always kind of little different things. And then pitching for other bigger jobs is another part of working with my representation, Jelly Bean. They're also doing their work to find work, that we can collaborate on and work together. And so they have their contacts, and we're constantly talking about what we can do to get more work. And freelance is a crazy world. You never know what's around the corner. Nothing's predictable. There's the whole like pitching for work and sometimes not getting it. Sometimes it just disappears.
What was the last big job you did with Jelly Bean?
We did a shoot for Target and Purina, and Hillary Duff was like using a Target app to order the Purina dog food, like delivery or for pickup. That one was a lot of fun.
Can you kind of walk me through your process on like, when your rep reached out to you about the job, what do they say to you? And then how do you translate that into what you want to do and, an execution and what you end up doing in post, like the whole job? What's that like for you?
I mean, every job's so different. So that one was the agency going through the representation and then, building out an estimate for what it would cost us to deliver what they needed, and putting together a deck. And this one was video and stills, which seems to be more common these days for like my work and the things I'm offered. And so this was more about shooting the stills, but also hiring a DP, and I was directing the commercial spots. So that was a whole other, arm of this project. So we put together, I had worked with a DP on another shoot with Jelly Bean as well. So we got him in the mix. Jelly Bean was communicating with the agency. I think I was doing some storyboards back and forth, making sure we hit all of the spots we needed to hit. But I think they had reached out to me too, because there was an aspect of like the look of how I shoot things that they wanted to do.
Did they have a specific creative ask for you?
Yeah, they had like a deck, and there was like, oh, we need to make these, these 3 different videos, and we need to have some stills taken as well. And this was really interesting because it was like using Hillary's like real dogs. So that was another component where it's like, oh, we're going to have, her dogs basically as little actors on set. So, and she had a couple lines that she had to like read too. So, and we only had like 4 hours to do this. So there was, it was very limited time to get everything needed. So there was a full day of lighting and planning, and I helped with the scouting and finding everything. So it feels great to work on those big shoots where you're sort of like in the center and you have like a team that's coming together to collaborate and make this thing. And there was a lot of, I was helping storyboard this thing. So they were depending on me some, and also working with the DP, the cinematographer, to sort of like figure out our shots. So we were able to get them and make sure we delivered what they needed in a creative way. This was a social campaign. So everything was like, we already knew it was going to be vertical and live on Instagram. And
was it local?
Yeah, we shot that in Los Angeles.
Once you shoot the content and do all the motion, what's the post process like for you? Do you hand it over, or are you very hands-on?
I'm usually very hands-on. I did the retouching on the photography and an editor to work on the videos. But I got to see Final Cut before everything was approved and everything like that.
With the jobs that you've been getting, say this year, are you doing motion and stills, or is each job different? What's kind of is there like a common denominator in everything you've been asked to do? Because I know back in the day people were doing stuff for print and or doing commercials, and now it's kind of like you get streaming, you got social, you get all these channels that they're kind of getting their content onto.
Because I tackle so many different types of photography, I get sometimes I'm the behind the scenes photographer on a shoot. There's already like a stills photographer. Sometimes I'm doing GIFs and video and stills. So I think people, and because I've represented all types of work on my website and my social channels, I think it's good. I don't have a narrow focus. Some photographers, I think they have made one clear path, and they're able to say, I do this and I get hired for this, and that's what they get hired for, and they're great at it. I do think that I sometimes, based on whatever, I will get a pattern, or I'll get steered into like one more kind of direction of what I'm hired for.
Having this kind of diverse style of being able to do portraits and food and kind of cross over to all different fields, do you feel like that's been a benefit to you in terms of being able to be up for more work, or do you feel like it's left you open for being vulnerable to people not being able to make up their mind for what they want because you do so many things?
Yeah, I do think I get hired for different things, and I think it's good. It doesn't always get boring. I've been in roles for specific jobs where I'm doing multiple things. So I've done and I think that is because maybe they don't have to reach out to somebody else. I can kind of fit all these roles in, and maybe if I didn't, they would have to get other people to do it. Whereas I've been on a shoot that's been 3 days for a company. One day I was doing video. The second day I was doing, flat like food shoots, and the next day was like lifestyle. And so they were all kind of filtered through the way that I look at the world and the way that I shoot. And so it probably felt pretty, I think it felt cohesive. So, but that's not always the case. I do love those scenarios though, because it's great to be able to try all those things. And if you're, if you have the correct team around you to make them all work well, but yeah, also if the focus is more specific, that's great too. I do get hired to do one very specific thing on a job where there's multiple people, and it's been pointed out, oh, he can do video and he can do stills too. I think it is beneficial, and it's beneficial to me too, because I feel like it's nice to be able to keep at it and keep working in these different sort of mediums.
Yeah, I hear so many times where people, they'll hire 3 different people to do, like you said, the 3 different aspects, because the creatives can't imagine the person that's doing the food, to shoot people and vice versa. So with what we just said, is AI playing a role in what you do creatively? How has it made its way into your world?
That's something that's still sort of new to me. I think I'm kind of looking at it from a creative viewpoint, and not like how can I use it. I've definitely used it in small instances of fixing a picture and like retouching. That's been like my biggest use scenario. I've seen all the wild things you see online.
Oh yeah.
That are being done, and for instance, something that's just so. I think I look at it. Oh man, what is so useful? Oh, this, you can clean up this audio. I've been going through this footage of from 20 years ago. I shot on a camcorder, and now the technology's there to just fix this audio with like one click, and that's amazing. And I find that super helpful, and that doesn't really feel like the machine taking over to me. That feels like, oh, I'm making this thing better.
Have you been asked to do any AI stuff in the jobs you've had recently?
Not really. The main thing I've been using is just like generative fill and things in Photoshop. There are some really nice features in Lightroom, and I love that. I mean, it's things that I used to do that they just implemented, like,
right.
Brightening just the iris of the eyes and things like that. They're so helpful, and then you start seeing, and I haven't worked with any of this, but I've just heard about it, about how you can, filter in all of your pictures, and it'll like learn how you edit, and then it can adapt, and then it can edit your photos for you. And it's really smart about it. I just haven't gotten into that quite yet. But I could see how that could be a big time saver, which I'm all about. That's awesome, because I spend so much time with stuff. And if there is a smart way to do that, I find that super helpful.
I noticed you mentioned the theme across everything has been budgets are smaller, the ask is bigger. How has that kind of been affecting you in terms of what you do?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a lot of it has to do with like sticking to your laurels, and that's not always hard when someone says like, this is what we have, and then you don't always want to say no, because then it's like it's just figuring out where your limit is. I don't know. It's harder to reach people. It's always been sort of a tough industry. I think music industry, movie industry, they're all sort of like have their own engines running, as far as specifically with like photo and like commercial video industry. I think, they're always going to be evolving.
Have things been slower for you this year than normally?
Yeah, they have. I used to view it as, this was a good week or this was a bad week. Now I think, maybe it's like full year arcs. It could be. And maybe if I view my life more in that way, it's helpful. It's really hard to think about that when you have, to pay for things throughout the year.
Especially with the kids. I mean, the pressure's on, right? And it's like all of a sudden, I feel like this year, and everybody I've talked to has just been, dead AF in terms of, asks or bids, or, even being able to connect with creatives.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I feel like money was pulled from the future quarters to be able to pay for the Olympics. And I feel like people kind of wait for the election to kind of be over to decide what kind of, what they want to do creatively with their campaigns and what directions to go. But what do you kind of see as being the future of what we do and incorporating AI into that as well?
Yeah, I mean, as I talk to like other photographer friends and things, kind of people in my same sort of like sphere, it seems like everyone has sort of different arcs, like someone will be like, I mean, it is interesting to be like, oh, good, you're not getting work too. It's
the same thing.
Yeah. And then you talk to someone like, oh, I've been so busy. But then like your busy period will come like a month later or whatever. So it's always kind of like, and then, talking to like my representation, because they're communicating all the time with all the other photographers and video people on their roster who are, all kind of do a little bit different things than I do. So but they're also dealing with commercial brands and other, commercial agencies. And so, it's always interesting how, like a lot of, I love like the consistency of like finding, like being able to work with a brand like Postmates over a couple year span and not always having projects with them, but things pop up here and there. And then eventually things kind of like, peter out, or they kind of go a different direction. But it's harder for me to find these like kind of one-off jobs that, I feel like, I don't know, it's just out there and how does it, is freelance life just being lucky and trying to hope that something good comes around? Like, how much can I do? And I feel like I'm always asking myself that question of what else can I do? There's like a portfolio review. I've done those before where I pay and I go talk to somebody. It can be helpful 6 years down the line. You'll get a job from somebody. So
right.
There's like as much, and I started an email newsletter trying to, do as much as I can to keep, my work and my name out there. So, but I think there is a good portion of luck or just the word of mouth or knowing people and, doing the best job that you can all the time, trying to stay on your tiptoes. But yeah, I think there might be like full year arcs of, okay, this is sort of a down year. Maybe next year's more of an upturn. And, there's all these other changes you can make too. Like, do we move cities? Do we move, does that benefit anything? I don't know. I used to travel a lot more. I think I've been more kind of, pitched for work in New York here and there, but a lot of things stay like around here, which makes sense. This is where I live.
What do you kind of see the future of what we do being?
I think it'll probably just be more integrated into editing process and being able to make things easier. Hopefully it doesn't increase the need for the creative thought on the input, because I feel like that's always going to be valuable no matter what. I'm really into just, and I think this is funny, but how you've seen like, AI is taking this video and then they're looking at it from like a year ago and it's already so much better. I kind of like that. It was like weird first versions of like AI videos where like Will Smith's eating a hamburger and his fingers are all messed up.
It's funny that AI went wrong at fingers. It's the most common issue. The first thing I check, when I see something like, there's 6 fingers, definitely AI for sure.
Yeah.
It's probably a good time for 10 questions.
It's time for
10 questions. Is that a yes or no, or what do you think?
10 questions.
10 questions.
10 questions. If you could only use one creative tool for the rest of your career, what would it be?
Probably camera, I guess.
Camera.
Yeah, camera.
Any particular type of camera?
A digital camera. Yeah,
Any
a lot of
particular-
capabilities.
Any particular one you'd like?
Probably just the one I have, the Canon.
What do you
Canon
use?
I use a Canon R5, but I've used like Canon Mark IV, Mark III. Like,
what's your go-to 90s jam?
so many.
There are so many.
Okay, I'll say Divine Hammer by the Breeders. I love that song, and that's on Last Splash.
The weirdest thing in your workplace right now?
I had a little office, which became my daughter's room. And so now I just have a desk at the front of our apartment. I don't have another workspace. I have a camcorder sitting here that I started using when like my daughter was born, and it's just a nice tool to be able to, it's not an iPhone, you know, I'm not like, oh, what email is coming in or what text is coming in. I just like click it open, roll, and I get this nice, beautiful, old looking footage of things. That's, I wouldn't say it's weird. Got some vitamins on my desk because I'm old.
Cats or carrots? Which one's more terrifying?
Cats, definitely cats. I love cats, but I can't pet them because the dander. Just had an allergy since I was a kid. Even if I've been in a house where there was a cat, I will start sneezing. You know, it's what they lick their fur with that I'm allergic to. And so even if you're going and they're like, oh, I cleaned, and it's like, doesn't matter because the cat has been everywhere. Carrots, I can eat them if they're cooked. I don't know. They're fine. But the raw carrot is just itchy. I don't know.
What's a creative trend you secretly love?
I mean, I love the memes. Who doesn't love a meme? But I kind of secretly love like what the old memes when they would just have that type with like the thick border around it. Because it just instantly meant like, oh, this is gonna be funny.
The Imgur posts.
Yeah, exactly. I like when and I think probably Urban Outfitters started this, but just like stretching type, like purposely bad type that is so bad that it's cool. Still see it around all the time where it's just, oh, I'm just purposely making this like bad so that it's cool, I guess. I don't know. I gravitate towards it. I don't know.
Describe your ideal day off in one word.
Hanging out with my daughter.
That'll do it. What's the most random project you've ever worked on?
Organizing over 10,000 items on the Rose Bowl field.
Holy cow.
To create a 99 for 99-cent only store.
How big how big in size was the 99?
It was huge. It was like half the football field. Someone from Guinness came and counted all the items.
Wow.
Yeah, that was like months of planning, and we had to do it. Oh, it was to celebrate 9/9 Day. So September 9th, it was a day created by 99-cent only store. We had to get all of the items had to be off of the field. We did it overnight and took the photo at sunrise and then had to clear all of the items so that like the plastic it was really hot. Didn't want the plastic to melt onto the grass or anything.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, there was probably like 50 people help. That one comes to mind because that was a massive scale.
If you could collaborate with any brand you haven't worked with yet, who would it be?
Probably Google.
Interesting. I can imagine your style. It's funny, the second you said that, I was like, I can imagine you doing just the Google letters.
Oh,
at the top. How cool that would be. Anyways, what's your superpower when it comes to client relationships?
I would say communication, but I'm not always great at that. I think delivering something unique, going above and beyond what's asked of me is probably my superpower. Yeah.
If you weren't in the creative industry, what would you be doing?
Driving a car, driving Uber? I don't know. That's really tough. I have considered that before, and I don't think there's any other option for me. A lifeguard? Like, I don't know. It'd have to be something so opposite that there was like no room to get creative with the position. I think because I would try and find some way to do something fulfilling with it. But also there is a sense that I've thought about this before of being able to show up and do a job and then like leave it. With like freelance, you've never leave anything or any kind of creative position. It's just something's always percolating. So if you were to go work, clock in, make some coffee drinks, clock out, leave, go home, and it's completely off of your brain for the rest of the day.
Mail delivery.
Yeah. I actually, that's funny you say that. I sometimes see this one postal mailman, and he just looks like he's always listening to the jams. He looks like he's having a great time, and I'm like, and he gets to drive around a cool little truck. I don't know. I actually have mentioned that to my wife before. Like, that looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically freelance. He's by himself. He gets to be on his feet outside all day.
Yeah.
Maybe the occasional dog encounter, but other than that, it's just putting stuff in a hole. Like,
yeah, basically in California, and you have sunshine a lot. A lot of them around me always have long sleeves on.
Sun protection.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going with that answer. I'm gonna steal that. Yeah.
You got it.
10 questions.
10 questions. What would you tell your younger self?
I really putzed around for like a really long time, which in hindsight, I'm like, okay, that's just how it took me, how long it took me to get to what I do. Because when I graduated high school and started college, I was more focused on music, and I think I was getting away from art and painting and all design and all this stuff, because I just wanted to go more in like a music industry. It just seemed like I needed a pivot, and that was like a place to go. And then somewhere along the line, a couple of years into that, I was like, I need to take art classes again. Like, I don't see myself doing this. So I went back into and that's where I found like what I love. And I'm like, wow, it took me a minute to sort of pivot that. And I think a lot of people will graduate with one thing and then like have to go back to school or whatever, because it wasn't the right thing. And I'm glad I sort of kind of made that correction and went more back into the art world. But there's been a lot of crossover. I work with a lot of musicians. I put out a record. I still write. I still like love music. Played in bands for years. But as far as like working in that career, like I've maintained that as a hobby, and that is tough too. I think sometimes with having a hobby that you love to do as work, which I have that with photography. My younger self, I would say, I'd have contemplated this before too, because portfolio schools became a thing, and I kind of languished and just hung out, and I spent a couple years just doing core classes at college. And I do think it was formative in me becoming like an adult, becoming my own person. But it was interesting to see later on how these portfolio schools popped up, and you could go there and just hibernate and focus on making your work. And I'll never know, but I thought, that I probably would have like kind of sped through what I wanted to do. But I also have friends that I went to school with that were like, don't dismiss like our what we did, because we were around some great people, and really, it was a good path that we went. So he was good at reminding me to not be like regretful or resentful of going it the way I did. But my younger self, don't compare yourself to other people. Maybe that's what I would tell myself. Don't compare yourself to someone because they're 21 and they've already figured it out. It might take you a couple more years than that.
What advice would you have for somebody trying to get into photography, doing what you do?
I get emails from people all the time. Like, do you have anything coming up that I could assist on, or do you, could you connect me with anybody like that? I think reaching out to people like in your field is great, even just to like meet up for a cup of coffee. I think that stuff goes a long way, because I've had people reach out to me, and because they were in my inbox, they've kind of stuck out in my mind. Or, but I think developing your own style, creating projects for yourself, I think that's really important, because for me personally, that's helped me have something I can consistently like work on and showcase like me. Yeah, just trying to work with people that are better than you. That's always been like a big thing, because you'll learn and you'll get better. This is like stuff that I'm still thinking about doing too. Like, how do I consistently get like better? And
of all the things you've ever worked on or ever done, what's what sticks out to you as your favorite?
I worked on some stuff for Postmates that ended up on the 80-foot billboard, and that was unexpected and really exciting to be able to go down in Hollywood and see this huge billboard of this photo that I took. Like, I've never seen a picture that big that I took with my camera. Way back when, I worked on some campaigns with Mailchimp that were experimental that ended up also like on, big in the city on billboards. And that was exciting to be able to drive around and be like, oh, I did that. And it was all based on these paint trips, and it was really eye-catching. Yeah. I mean, all three of those were working with brands that like were open and like seeing these executions like used well and creatively.
Is there anyone that you'd like to thank?
I mean, I thank my wife for being supportive of everything. I met her through a mutual friend because she needed a photographer. She's a hairstylist, and she needed a photographer for a creative shoot. So I'm thankful to him. His name's Rami, and he introduced us, and we've had a chance to work on a couple projects over the years together, which is like, I mean, I wish we could work on things all the time, like creatively. It doesn't always align with like our two work environments or jobs or whatever you would call it. But the handful of times it's been like awesome, and I could see how like husband and wife teams can like make it work. But a couple of people I've worked for over the years, Stefan Kjartansson, he's Icelandic. I worked with him and Kevin Bird at this agency in Atlanta called Armchair Media, and we worked on a lot of great projects there, and that was very formative. And they were the ones that kind of pushed me more in the photo world from the design world. Ron Lewis from Mailchimp, who was the creative director there, another like mentor that like it really had my back and like let me run. And and then Eric Boisfort, who is he owns an agency called Meaningful Works, and he's one of the ones that brought me in for 99-cent only stores, and worked with him on many other brands as well. And he's always been a huge supporter and champion and awesome to work with. And those are the people that are all, mentors and make me better at what I do. So thankful to them.
That's cool. So where can people find you and your work?
I have a website, jasontravisphoto.com. I have a design website, jasontravisdesign.com. I have an Instagram, jtrav. I have all of the other social accounts on my website.
Yeah, we'll get all those into the description as well, so that'll all be in there.
Yeah, I have all my videos and photos and everything up on the site. Split up in categories.
It's cool, man. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all your insight into your process and how you work and what inspires you. And I think a lot of other people appreciate it too.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Bonus chit chat. Oh yeah, chit chat.
Do you still have one kid, or do you have more than one?
I have two. I have
Nice.
Chevelle and Huxley.
I think you just had one last time I saw you.
Yeah. I had one at the time. And then in 2022 had number two, which is like it's a game changer. It's one thing when you have one kind of tagging along with you everywhere, but when you're outnumbered, it's a different fucking game. And they're out to basically plan your demise. They want to end you. They want you to fail at everything. And they're going to yell at you and scream at you while you do it, as long as while they're fighting with one another. It's kind of the best of all the worlds. But yeah, I had no idea. I used to go I used to like run marathons and stuff. And then I had kid number two, and then I was like running to Taco Bell to get food for everybody in the drive-thru, so I wouldn't have to spend 20 minutes getting them out and then putting them back in, because it's like a really long process. And so now I've kind of like, you know what, we just got the bike trailer, I put two kids in there, I go running that way. It's kind of like exercise, like everything's kind of like getting them out of the house and getting them to do stuff.
Yeah.
And then also to tire them out, because it's just everybody's happier that way. Because then if not, then they go stir crazy, then they're irritated, they're cranky, and they're just pissing each other off. And then, you look at them weird and they just start crying at you. And, I wanted a girl for the second one because, I love doing dress up and playtime and all that other stuff. And, the second kid is literally Chris Farley reborn. I mean, she's a tornado. And then at that point I was like, you know what? I'm ready for a boy. Fuck it. I mean, I didn't want someone to break all my shit and have to fight with somebody in the house. But this kid literally screamed at me for 8 months because she was mad she was stuck in a bouncer and couldn't walk around on her own. I mean, this kid wanted to do and wants to do everything that her older sister does and can give two shits about what my agenda is. And probably when the second she finds out what it is, she's against it. Absolutely. Just instantly no. Like, oh yeah, Dad, I totally want that for dinner. And then you get it for her and she's like, not hungry. This is a kid who literally at 2 months old or 3 months old, when she was in her high chair, I like bring her food over, feed it to her, and she would just kind of like, Dad, I don't want it. And I'm like, I'm cooking dinner for everybody. I'm like, I'll be right there. Give me a second. Dad, I don't want it. And she's pushing it towards the edge of the high chair. And the second I get there to grab it, she just pushes it over. And she looks at me and she's like, uh-oh. Just a flying piece of shit like that. I'm like, where does this kid even get this from? How does he even know to act like this?
Yeah. That's hilarious.
It's totally nuts. How's yours?
She's good. She's like, it's been so exciting the last, from like a year on. I don't know, it just keeps getting better, but just so much personality, and she's just talking so much now. Like this week she was like, Marianne was like, Dad needs to move that table into storage so we can put a Christmas tree there. And she goes, Dad, move table, storage, Christmas tree right there. And I'm like, that is so many words.
Yeah.
Like, where is what? And then she just keeps repeating it over and over again. But yeah, she's got a lot of energy, like a lot, and it's pretty awesome.
That's cool.
I can tell though, like being like, I take her somewhere and I'm just like, she's way smarter than these other kids. Like, and I don't know if that's like a personal thing, but like, I'll be like, she's way smarter than that boy. And I know that girls probably advance better.
They do. And the funny thing is, so my first kid grew up during the pandemic. So she literally didn't go to a playground until she was, 2.5, 3. And when we started to go, and I didn't have other kids to compare my daughter to, other than maybe like her niece, but they never really hung out. We went to the playground and we're on the swing, and we're doing the thing or whatever, and the lady next to me looks at me. She's like, "Oh, how old's your kid? 5?" I said, "She's 2," and she's looking at her kid and my kid, and I'm like, "Oh fuck, my kid's as big as a 5-year-old, and she's 2." I had no idea. I mean, we go to the doctor. The kid was like, "Oh, you're in the 99th percentile for the, for her height," and I was like, "Okay, whatever." And then, I'm looking. I'm like, "Dude, I got robbed. I got robbed of 2 years of like little kid because she's massive." And I had no. I mean, I was taking her. She could go on all the Disneyland rides at 4.5 years old. She's 48 inches. I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. Before school started, we were she's doing Thunder Mountain. I was like, what?
Wow.
So fast.
It is fast. I'm noticing that. Everyone, all those like things that people said, it's just all true. All the things like, oh, you won't really love any kids until like you have your own, like you won't get it. Like, I just identify so much with other parents, but then I also kind of like hate hearing other parents like talk about sleep and all that stuff. I'm just like, I don't want to talk about that stuff. Like, but yeah, it's a different world. It's definitely changed perspective on everything, which I love. I'm 43, so I was 42 when she was born, and I don't think I could have done it when I was younger. I think I needed all of those 42 years to be able to be ready and be like, oh, I partied, I did it all, and now let's do this, and I can be very very attentive like father and be very like present. So I've accepted that and really into that. So that's I think that's a good thing about, I don't know, just it hits you at the right time when you need to do it.
I wish I had pressed record longer and just let it roll, just to see them live. You know, everything is like so short that we film, oh, do this or do that or this event, but it's like literally just like set the camera in the room, hit record, and just let it run. So I'm like, that's kind of like what I'm looking to, like anytime we're like hanging out, I'm like, what is this? Like, I'm gonna want to capture this moment in time and just be able to go back to it.
I notice a lot of times I'll take like a bunch of stills pictures of her, and I'm like, oh, I need to be doing video, like, because there's so much that the video captures, especially because it's like, you know, they're gonna keep changing. But the the camcorder became a fun tool I started bringing at when she was, when we were at the hospital, and we're doing the whole birth thing, and I was like, I'm that 90s like dad with the camera, and then I just kept shooting throughout the year and then edited it for the family into like a nice like 30-minute video of just seeing her go from born to 1 year. And so that's something I just like pick up. I don't know, something about the phone, I'm like, oh, this is digital, it's taking up so much space. This camcorder footage is just like all analog, and I can just digitize it, and just, I don't know, it just has a different feel to it. But yeah, I do, I take smaller clips with the phone than I do with the camcorder. I don't know, the work tools are pretty standard. Just other like she's ripped off the top of the markers, nothing else too weird.
Just fix it in post.